Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yugioh Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. I am doing probably one of my more unhinged, insane ideas today, and that is ranking every single duel from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime. Now, this is a video that has been in the works for months. It has not taken a short amount of time, as you can imagine, because I had to go back, rewatch all of these duels, rank them on a scale from 1 to 10, and then put them in order and just kind of write up a quick summary of how I feel about these duels. So, if you have close to an hour to burn, grab a drink, grab a snack, sit down and enjoy my ranking of every single duel from the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. I hope you all enjoy. Number 80, Yugi versus Mokuba. This duel is extremely short. It literally lasts 4 turns, and 2 of them are Mokuba summoning Man-Eating Plant and passing, and then Crocodilius and passing. It's a complete snooze fest, and then comes to an abrupt anticlimactic end. It's one of the most forgettable duels in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, and it is rightfully at the bottom of this list. Number 79, Yugi versus Johnny Steps. I hate this duel. If you watched my top 10 most hated duels in Yu-Gi-Oh!, you might remember this one being on there. I think the duel serves absolutely no purpose at all in the story, and is one of the rare manga-only duels in a non-manga-only season in Duel Monsters. The duel has a little more action than the prior one, so it does manage to avoid the bottom spot in terms of worst, but this is my most hated duel from this show, and 79th out of 80th sounds about right for me. Number 78, Rebecca versus Vivian. While I can't help but cringe a little every time I think of Vivian Wong, the duel between Vivian and Rebecca is very forgettable. It says a lot when the short duel at the end of this episode, that being Siegfried versus Rex and Weevil, is a lot more memorable in my opinion than the main duel of the episode. Rebecca getting the win was predictable, and this duel is a tough one to watch back. Number 77, Rick and Yugi versus the Duel Computer. Yugi takes on a supercomputer in what ends up being a somewhat unique duel due to how it ends. Heart of the Underdog allows him to continue to draw every time he draws a normal monster. This eventually sets up him discarding 6 dragon monsters during the damage step to get Spirit Ryu up to 7,000 attack in order to get the win. It's a weird and almost tutorial-like duel, which feels more like Yami trying to solve a duel puzzle with a loner deck. Not a big fan of this one, obviously. Number 76, Jonochi versus the Red Jacket Duelist. This is a dream duel that takes place during the classic Yugi versus Kaiba Battle City duel. It's definitely a strange one, which fits the theme of this being a weird dream world that Joey is in. I think the craziest part of this duel is the fact that Joey actually loses to some random nobody. The duel isn't horrible per se, but the fact that it takes place in the middle of an epic clash between Yugi and Kaiba really makes me have zero interest in watching, hence its very low placement on the list. Number 75, Kaiba versus Bakura. How on earth is a duel between these two characters one of the worst in Yu-Gi-Oh? This duel has top 10 duel written all over it just because of the character quality involved. Sadly and frustratingly, this duel ends right as it starts to get going. After Kaiba has a really good turn, Yami Bakura just straight up leaves, marking the duel as a no result. Perhaps I have this one a bit low, but the way that it ends is just so unsatisfying that it knocks it down massively for me. This is also Kaiba's final duel in the anime, which is incredibly underwhelming given how it plays out. Number 74, Yugi vs. Pegasus, Round 1. This is officially the second duel in the show, and it's not a very memorable one. Pegasus uses the power of a VHS tape to duel Yugi in this weird Yami no game. It's an extremely basic duel, which ends pretty unsatisfyingly, as the game timer simply runs out right as it seems Yugi is closing in on a win. The duel is super important as opposed to the previous ones we've mentioned so far, as it allows Pegasus to card Grandpa Moto, which sets the entire arc and the show in motion. Despite its importance, it's a snooze fest duel, action-wise. Number 73, Kaiba versus the duel robot. Geez, another duel versus a robot and another bottom 10 duel. This one gets a tiny bit of credit because of the amazing sequence of Kaiba finally summoning Obelisk the Tormentor. Outside of the bonus points it gets for an Egyptian god summon, it's a completely worthless and forgettable duel. Maybe having characters dueling personality-less machines isn't such a good idea after all. At least in Yu-Gi-Oh! Reigns, the artificial intelligence has personality. Well, for the most part. Number 72, Mai versus Jean-Claude Magnum. If you looked up clown in the dictionary, I think you'd find a picture of Jean-Claude Magnum. It's a classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Wager. If Mai loses, she must marry Jean-Claude. The duel is incredibly simplistic, as a lot of the turns are super quick and just feature either Mai or Magnum summoning one monster, attacking, and then ending turn. It's boring, completely unnecessary, and if I didn't enjoy seeing Mai crush Magnum's dreams via winning the duel, it might even be a little lower than 72nd. Number 71, Joey versus Duke. The infamous duel that got Joey into a dog suit. This duel obviously serves as an appetizer to the main course, which is Yugi versus Duke, and it definitely feels that way. I will say, watching it back, it was really cool to see Duke use limiter removal, which I honestly thought debuted in GX and not Duel Monsters. Still, it's a forgettable duel that really just gets Joey into a dog suit while building up the Yugi-Duke-Devlin clash, which we'll discuss later in this list. Number 70, Joey versus Rare Hunter. What can I say? I'm a bit of a sucker for Exodia summons. That's the only reason this duel isn't lower. The Rare Hunter uses Graceful Charity on 2 of his turns and sets and passes on his other before eventually drawing Exodia and obliterating Joey. The build up to this moment was pretty good, but they could have just showed Joey losing to Exodia at the end and it would have saved us a few minutes of screen time. I could see some people liking this duel because of that Exodia summon, but overall, it's a very eventless duel. Number 69, Bakura versus Bones. What a creepy duel this was. Bakura confronts Bones in a graveyard because, of course he does, and the duel commences. This is one of the only times in the show I actually felt bad for Bones. The duel is pretty quick, but seeing Yami Bakura psychologically pick apart Bones was incredibly eerie. The dub censors what is a straight-up depiction of Bones and his friends being dragged to hell at the end of this duel, and honestly, I think the 7-year-old kid in me is happy I didn't have to watch that until I was older. Number 68, Joey versus Mai, round 1. It's kind of cool that these two end up dueling 3 times in the anime, when I believe this was their only duel in the original manga. I know I have this one a bit low, but I think if you take the nostalgia glasses off, this duel does not hold up well at all. Tossing aside the wonky Duelist Kingdom rules, 3 of the 9 turns in this one is just a duelist summoning or setting a monster in defense and then passing. It was cool to see Joey figure out my strategy by using perfume on her cards, but that's easily the most memorable thing from this clash. It did spawn a fantastic TGS anime Mythbusters style video, but TGS anime aside, the duel is not great. Don't worry, the next 2 duels between these two are a lot higher, I promise. Number 67, Taya versus Mai. Another forgettable duel involving Mai. We all remember this one. Yugi's feeling down because of what just happened with his duel against Kaiba. Taya challenges Mai to a duel. Taya is way out of her element, but Mai eventually surrenders and Taya picks up a shocking and very undeserved win. I genuinely thought Taya was really brave for challenging Mai and kind of did enjoy the overall message of the episode and of the duel, but it doesn't save this from being one of the worst duels in the original series. Number 66, Yugi and Kaiba versus the Rare Hunter duo. I mean, this duel is really simplistic. Kaiba goes, generic Rare Hunter sets a monster and passes. Yugi goes, generic Rare Hunter number 2 sets Mirror Force and passes. Then Kaiba goes again, and Obelisk absolutely incinerates them. Come on, the duel itself is super quick and is only cool because of Obelisk, but I can't find the justification of putting it much higher than this. It's probably insane. This is as high as 66th, but the Obelisk summon is always just so hype, and it definitely bumped it up a lot of spots on this list for me. Number 65, Yugi versus Oshita. I think this is our first Virtual World Arc duel, and trust me, they're going to start flooding in now. This is also the first duel of the Noah arc, and it's ironically my least favorite of all the duels. The duel felt very much like a tutorial-style setup, as the viewer needed to learn about deck masters and what functions they play in a duel. And frankly, this duel lasts 3 episodes too long. 3 episodes for this duel, and the duel only lasts 10 turns. The duel gets stretched out over the Taya being abducted by Ogre's plotline, and it's just bad. This also always reminds me that this is what we left Battle City for. Come on, man. The Duel Master concept was cool, so it's a bit higher than some of the other annoying duels on this list. Number 64, Joey versus Oka. Court is now in session, although it should have been adjourned right when this duel started. All right, enough with the court puns. I don't want to be thrown out of contempt. Thrown out of contempt? Thrown out for contempt? Whatever. Listen, I got to crack jokes while doing this video. This is a crazy, crazy long video. I know we're getting to the good duels soon, but right now we are still in the bad to mid area, and this is another Duel Master duel that didn't really impress me. This whole arc, for the most part, felt out of place for a lot of the characters not named Kaiba. Noah tries to stop this one because Johnson was cheating, but in classic Yu-Gi-Oh fashion, Joey tells Noah to keep the duel going. Joey wins, and that's that. My advice to you, if you want to watch a bunch of clowns in a courtroom, go watch Judge Judy. It's much more entertaining. Number 63, Valen versus Rebecca and Duke. It's a quick and pretty pointless duel. I do give credit to the show for making Valen look strong in his first duel. At this point in time, I'd say Rebecca and Duke were certainly capable of holding their own, and so for Valen to beat both of them at once was certainly a good look for him. Him dodging Mirror Force was also pretty cool. Outside of Valen looking like a G, though, there isn't really much to this duel. Number 62, Yugi versus Mako. Attack the moon. I think this duel will forever be timeless due to the giant soldier of stone actually attacking the moon to literally and figuratively change the tides in this one. This is another weird duel to look back on due to the strange and absent Duelist Kingdom rules. It does have a bit of entertainment due to this, but the duel is very basic Yu-Gi-Oh! With a lot of turns just being summon or set, attack or pass, end turn. It's not the most compelling dueling style to me, even though it does bring me back to the simpler days. Number 61, Yugi versus Rebecca. The biggest upset win in Yu-Gi-Oh! History? Well, maybe. Yugi does surrender, which symbolizes putting the clash between the Motos and the Hawkins to rest, and I actually always liked the message behind this duel. I thought learning a bit more about Yugi's grandpa was cool, and seeing Yugi realize not all duels are worth winning was actually a really cool message. Believe it or not, this for over a decade was the only time a girl character defeated a protagonist in Yu-Gi-Oh! It didn't happen again until the second episode of Arc 5 when Yuzu beat Yugioh, which also had a fluky ending. And with that, we are a quarter of the way there. All these duels we have discussed so far are in my bottom 20 of the 80 Duel Monster duels. Number 60, Rebecca versus Leon. Prodigy Child versus Prodigy Child. I actually really liked the billing going into this duel, and low-key, the duel is pretty enjoyable. I think the reason it's below a lot of other duels is simply because I didn't really care all that much about Rebecca or Leon. This is one where the duel action really carries it a lot more than the characters' stories. At no point did it ever feel like one duelist was overmatched, and even though Leon got the win, it felt like Rebecca was just one move away from picking up the win for herself. It's a solid duel, but a lack of caring about the characters definitely dropped it a bit for me. Number 59, Yugi versus Bakura, Round 1. The Yugi and Bakura duels are some of my favorite duels in the show. Well, except for this one. This sees our main group take on the roles of different ace monsters, which was actually pretty cool. All of Yami Bakura's early turns are just him setting a monster to eventually activate just desserts. While it doesn't make for the most eye-appealing action, it does lead him to use one of my favorite traps, which is cool. Eventually, little Bakura gets involved, and it leads Yami Yugi to destroying Yami Bakura's monster, Lady of Faith. There is a good symbolic change of heart sequence in this duel as well. It's honestly not a horrible duel, but it doesn't hold a candle to the two clashes that these two would have later on in the show. Number 58, Joey versus Grandpa Moto. I'll admit, the dub of this duel cracks me up because they just spelled Grandpa's name backwards and had characters running around calling him Apnarg. Okay, classic dub. But if one of the more memorable moments from a duel is a gag on the character's name, that probably says a lot. Seeing Grandpa use the ancient deck was pretty cool, but this one has always been pretty meh to me. Number 57, Joey versus Rex Raptor, Round 2. Another Joey duel. This takes place alongside the Weevil and Yami duel going on during the Orichalcos arc, and let's be honest, it just gets completely overshadowed by that duel. My Yu-Gi-Oh! Guilty pleasure is actually enjoying Rex Raptor's duels because of his dino decks, but outside of being able to watch some dinos, this duel does not have much value to it, and it certainly is the much weaker of the two that goes on during these episodes. Number 56, Serenity, Duke, and Tristan versus Ota. I have this one a lot higher than some of the other early Noah Virtual World duels because this one did have a genuine twist in it, which was Tristan sacrificing himself and actually losing. I always thought this was one of Tristan's better character moments and one that really shocked me when I was a kid. I will also say it was super cool seeing Serenity get her flowers and not only step up and duel, but be the winning duelist. Definitely one of my favorites out of the early Virtual World duels, but my lack of emotional investment in the Big Five certainly holds this one down quite a bit. Number 55, Yugi versus Weevil, Round 1. Such an early series duel, and a fun fact for all of you, this duel lasts 30 turns. Literally one of the longest turn-based duels we got in any Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. A big reason for that is the duels were basically non-existent at the time, and a lot of turns just saw these two play a monster and pass. I mean, take a look at this riveting turn log from this duel. It's fun for nostalgia for sure. I mean, it literally kicks off the Duelist Kingdom tournament, but I don't feel it holds up all that well in hindsight, especially when the nostalgia goggles are taken off. Number 54, Yugi versus Gorimo. A new threat looms. Right after Yugi wins the Egyptian God cards, he has to lose them because, you know, plot. They get stolen and this mysterious man uses Obelisk against him in a duel. Also, we see the debut of the terrifying Seal of Orichalcos. I honestly think this duel sets up the arc in a very solid way, but that's really all it was. A setup duel to introduce the actual bad guys of the arc and show off the Seal's power, which not only has an in-game effect on the duel, but then absorbs and kills off whoever loses the duel. The Seal demonstrates this by absorbing Gorimo, and that's pretty much that. Number 53, Yugi versus Panic. There was always something that creeped me out about this duel when I was younger, and now that I'm older, I can honestly say I think it was for good reason. Panic is very unsettling, and this duel has a really good creepy vibe throughout. The way this duel ends with the Swords of Revealing Light going away and allowing the Castle of Dark Illusions to fall is absolutely hilarious. Honestly, we are at the point of this list where I don't think any of these duels are necessarily bad, just not the best. Number 52, Taya versus Crump. No, I will not be doing a video for this one in my What Makes a Duel special series. That being said, this duel is decently entertaining, and I think it's definitely Taya's best duel. It gains a few bonus points for me because penguins are one of my favorite animals, and while Crump is insanely creepy, his deck is still cool because of the Pingus. Taya utilizing Dark Magician Girl and Dark Magician was also pretty fun to watch. The stakes of her being frozen to death definitely added to the intensity of this duel, and it does actually make for a somewhat entertaining matchup. Number 51, Yugi versus Fake Kaiba. Anytime Yugi and Kaiba duel, it's a must-see matchup, right? Well, what if it's Yugi dueling a not actually real version of Kaiba? That's what happens very early on in Duelist Kingdom. The action isn't anything to marvel at as it's early Duelist Kingdom, but there was something cool about watching these two duel, as there always is, even if it's not actually Kaiba. The Ghost version summons 3 different Blue Eyes White Dragons, Kaiba gets involved by implanting a virus into them that weakens them, Yugi beats one of them and then uses Monster Reborn to summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon on his own field, and uses it to win. It's super cool because of the usage of Blue Eyes White Dragon and Kaiba's impact from the sidelines, but besides that, it's a very bare bones duel. Number 50, Yugi versus Yami Yugi, Round 1. Yugi versus Yami. How does another duel that sounds amazing on paper not reach the top half of this list and barely makes it in the top 50? Well, this one is just super slow and pretty short. I did enjoy seeing Yami struggle dueling the possessed version of Yugi because Yugi activates the seal. I think the message was cool, and seeing these two duel was awesome, but the action within the duel itself is incredibly forgettable. And when you look at the actual duel these two would have later on in the show, I mean, come on. Number 49, Kaiba versus Gozabura. Kaiba takes on his abusive father in a duel that sees the Exodia Necro summon. I felt somewhat obligated to put this higher on the list because I have a freaking statue of this thing behind my desk. But I think 49th is fair. Seeing all the different effects of Necros was cool, but let's be honest, it's the less cool version of regular Exodia. Sorry, buddy, I prefer your design more if that's any consolation. Kaiba ends up removing all 5 pieces of Exodia from the graveyard and exercises his demons when it comes to his father and Exodia trauma all in one go. Good for him. Number 48, Yugi versus Bandit Keith. We've just been on a string of duels where not everything is what it seems. Yugi takes on Keith in a warehouse, but something is noticeably off about Keith. The unfortunate circumstances for him is that he is being controlled by Marek. While this duel is nothing crazy, the debut of Marek's abilities and ruthlessness is what makes it so memorable for me. Also, the end aesthetic of the warehouse being on fire, Yami Bakura being set free, like this duel symbolizes a lot of bad things whenever I think back on it, so it gets some props for that reason. Number 47, Kaiba versus Imelda. Let's keep it rolling with the not everything is what it seems ball. Kaiba duels Pegasus, who is actually Imelda. I enjoyed the rivalry between these two actually quite a bit, but this duel is kind of a setup for the one later on. The action is solid and it ends with a draw, which leaves the viewer with a lot to be desired, which of course we get later on in the arc. Won't be the last time we talk about this matchup, well, minus fake Pegasus. Number 46, Joey versus Esperoba. I feel like it's been a while since we talked about the prelims of Battle City. Remember, this is right when the anime started to follow the card game rules, so a lot of these early duels you could tell the show is trying to find their footing. Well, I happen to enjoy the Joey versus Espa duel. It was cool seeing a Mokuba side quest where he was trying to figure out how Espa's ESP worked, which of course was just his brothers using binoculars to peek into Espa's opponent's hand. That plot gets foiled, but the duel continues. Jinzo debuts. Joey gets some insanely lucky combo that's always fun to watch involving Jinzo and Reflect Bounder and Roulette Spider. You know, your typical Yu-Gi-Oh! Win con. Number 45, Kaiba versus Damon. Kaiba takes on his member of the Big Five, Damon. It was cool to see Kaiba come face-to-face with one of the members of the Big Five as well, considering he had a much more personal connection with them than any of the other characters in this arc. I think we all fell in love with Injection Fairy Lily, and we all remember Kaiba destroying Satellite Cannon with his Blue Eyes White Dragon, which is such a freaking cool sequence. It's like the 2002 version of Raid Raptor Satellite Cannon Falcon destroying Dennis's Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem many years later in the Arc 5 anime. This is definitely my favorite of the Big Five duels. It's nothing special, but it is the most memorable one, in my opinion. Number 44, Joey versus Bones. Okay, I will admit, I definitely have this one higher because of childhood nostalgia. For whatever reason, me and my brother would always binge watch a VHS that contained this duel and then the Paradox duel that would follow. Probably because it was the only Yu-Gi-Oh! VHS tapes that we owned, but because of that childhood nostalgia, these two duels are so memorable to me. This one doesn't hold up all that well, but I would still argue it's a solid duel. Loved the creepy atmosphere, even if Bones is a bit of a fraud. The duel somehow manages to be 24 turns, with a lot of them being set and pass, but the atmosphere and my nostalgia definitely props this up to the mid-40s, when maybe it shouldn't be that high. Number 43, Yugi versus Rare Hunter. I do love my Exodia episodes. We had just seen this Rare Hunter smack Joey with the power of Exodia, and seeing Yugi try to solve the mystery of Seeker's deck while Joey was helplessly watching on the side actually made for a really cool dynamic. Once Yugi figured out that Seeker was using Exodia, it made his life a bit easier, but he was still struggling to break through Seeker's combo. We were wondering if Yugi solved it too late, then he utilized Chain Destruction and destroyed all the head of Exodias in Seeker's deck, essentially ensuring his victory. Seeing him call out Seeker for using fake cards and ripping them up was such a badass moment to watch, and I really do like this one despite its simplicity. Number 42, Yugi versus Kaiba versus Marek versus Joey. You'll honestly be hard-pressed to find a more star-studded duel than this one. This duel determined who would duel who, as the first two eliminated would duel each other in the semis, and the last two left would also duel. I think I have this one a bit lower because I felt like this was a setup duel for the duels to come. I felt like the stakes were a lot lower than almost all of the duels before and after it in the story. While the concept was super cool, it felt too much like a setup duel to me, and it was very hard for me to be super invested in, but ultimately the banter and star power in this one certainly carries it to number 42. Number 41, Joey versus Bandit Keith. The duel where Bandit Keith dies. Wait, no, this isn't the manga. If you like gambling and on-point American stereotypes, this is definitely the duel for you. Keith cheats by hiding cards in his sleeves. Joey is able to overcome all of this with sheer skill and some classic Joey luck. This is a good duel that gives Joey probably his toughest and most important win up to this point in the show, and Keith being yeeted out of the castle by Pegasus is always hilarious. Number 40, Yugi and Joey versus the Big Five. Kicking off our top 40 and the top half of this list is the finale duel regarding the Big Five. After seeing each member of the Big Five individually duel our heroes, they decided to give us one final duel with control of Tristan on the line. I didn't care for any of the Big Five characters, and this duel didn't change that. It was cool to see Yugi and Joey work together to get over Five God Dragon, which, by the way, is the perfect choice of ace monster for the Big Five, and it marks the final appearance of these clowns, which is also nice. Number 39, Yugi versus Mai. I actually always liked this one. I feel like this one was a really good loss for Mai's character, and it always felt like Yugi was fighting a really uphill battle. Also, the Black Luster's ritual and debut, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Mai surrendering was also a nice touch, just completely overwhelmed by this new monster in Black Luster Soldier that she felt she didn't have a prayer, which felt like it added to the overall significance of Black Luster Soldier in a really cool and effective way. Number 38, Joey versus Rex, round 1. 3 words, red eyes, black dragon. I think it's 3 words because of the hyphen, right? Anyways, I have a soft spot for this one because it debuts one of my favorite monsters of all time in Red Eyes. It also marks the duel where Joey obtains Red Eyes, which is easily his most signature ace monster in the show. The action is what you'd expect for an early Duelist Kingdom duel. This also begins the luck streak of Joey as he bets it all on Time Wizard's coin toss, which lands correctly, winning him the duel. It's a fun one that I personally love because of Red Eyes Black Dragon. Number 37, Joey versus Weevil. Let's just stick with Joey, and my lord is Weevil annoying. He sneaks Parasite into Joey's deck prior to the duel beginning, which ends up giving him a massive advantage. But honestly, I loved this. I felt it made Weevil that much more despicable, and it made it a much harder challenge for Joey. The duel lasts a ridiculous 28 turns, but I felt like there was a lot of good action and strategy throughout, and seeing Joey utilize Gearfried and then Grave Robber to kill Insect Queen was so satisfying. I hate Weevil, love Joey, and was happy with the result. Number 36, Kaiba versus Pegasus. We're now reaching the duels that I would say are all good. Like, I'd consider all of the duels moving forward on this list good or better than good. This duel scared the heck out of me when I was young. Seeing how brutally Pegasus dominated Kaiba in this duel was shocking, since I considered Kaiba to be such a good duelist. The duel did such a good job in displaying the strength of Pegasus and solidifying him as a real genuine threat. It's also the first time we really get to see Pegasus duel, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. Kaiba blindly drawing and summoning Blue Eyes White Dragon was awesome, by the way. Number 35, Yugi versus Leon. The finals of the Kaiba Corp Grand Prix arc sees Yugi take on Leon, and while this wasn't my favorite duel of the arc, I thought it was still enjoyable. Some really good action throughout, including the usage of Golden Castle of Stromberg, which is such a card. You want to know what else is a card? Royal Straight Slasher, which we see Yugi utilize in this matchup. Leon's brother Siegfried hijacked the duel in a storyline I was somewhat invested in by planting Golden Castle in his brother's deck, which acted as a virus. The side story of this duel was actually pretty good, and it ultimately was a solid duel to conclude this filler arc. Number 34, Joey versus Mai, round 2. Mai makes her shocking debut in the Doma arc as an evil character, which honestly makes a lot of sense given how her story concluded in Battle City. She takes on Joey, which is fitting, in a really solid duel. It was cool to see Mai get a lot more love than she did in the manga in this arc, and her rivalry with Joey throughout this arc was really good, honestly. I dislike how this one ended with Valen breaking the seal in order to run away with Mai before the duel concluded, but it's a solid duel overall, and the rematch we will be discussing in just a little bit. Number 33, Marek versus Mai. We will stay with Mai, although this duel goes much worse for her. Seeing Marek duel for the first time in his Yami form was terrifying. He put Mai through the absolute ringer and dominated her in every way possible. Mai did get a bit of wind when she stole Marek's Ra, which was a really good move on her part. Unfortunately, she didn't know the ancient chant and was unable to summon the sun god. Marek would eventually use Ra to get the win. Yugi and Joey jumped in the way to try to save Mai, which was a great visual into how much they valued her as a friend. Sadly, it wasn't enough to prevent her from getting sent to an hourglass. At least in the anime, it was sand filling in it and not flesh-eating insects like the manga. Yuck. Number 32, Marek versus Bakura. A few episodes later, Marek would take on Bakura in a super rare villain versus villain duel. I think this is the only time we will ever see two top 10 Yu-Gi-Oh villains do battle with each other. The duel is a bit on the short side, but I've always loved this duel because of the fact that it's two unhinged villains dueling each other. We see Yami Marek terrifyingly fuse with Ra in order to incinerate Marek and Bakura, and this duel does a great job to legitimize Yami Marek from a power and dueling ability sense. Number 31, Joey versus Kaiba round 1. I feel like this duel gets overlooked a lot in Duelist Kingdom, but I feel like it's a pretty enjoyable duel. The back and forth between Joey and Kaiba really makes this one for me, as the duel action is pretty forgettable, but it was cool to see Kaiba duel again after the debacle he suffered in episode 1. And okay, the duel action is admittedly super subpar up until the end, where Joey summons his red eyes, only for Kaiba to summon his blue eyes. Sadly, it doesn't go the way the Toei movie did, otherwise red eyes may have actually led Joey to victory, but the star power here is enough to propel it to 31 for me. Number 30, Kaiba versus Imelda round 2. The rematch between Kaiba and Imelda was solid. I really did like the rivalry between them stemming from what Kaiba Corporation did to Imelda and his family, even though Seto certainly was not responsible for that. The story reaches its conclusion as Seto uses the Fang of Critias and eventually summons Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon, which is a freaking awesome summoning. The duel action is good, and the backstory is compelling, and this duel officially kicks off our top 30. Number 29, Siegfried versus Weevil and Rex. I already can see it. Dylan, how the hell can you have a 3-turn duel in the top 30? Okay, listen. I love this duel for some reason. I feel like this duel did such a great job at making Siegfried look like a total badass, as he was able to swiftly defeat two of the most annoying characters in the show without even explaining his monster effects. First time I watched this when I was a kid, I thought Siegfried was the best duelist in the world with an insane, unbeatable deck thanks to the antics of this duel. I probably like it a lot more than most people, but it is deservedly this high for me, despite its short length, because what it did for Siegfried's character and the fact that Weevil and Rex just got beaten so quickly. Number 28, Yugi versus Joey. Can we cue it up, please? Okay, can't play that because of copyright, but you get the point. This always shocks people, but believe it or not, this was an anime-only duel that did not happen in the original manga. It's a welcome addition as we see Yugi and Joey face off in what is a good duel before the Pegasus final boss fight. I think it's perfectly fitting that Yugi gets the win using Black Skull Dragon, which is a symbol of the friendship between these two. It's funny enough, the only time these two duel without any mind control elements, and it's one I'm really happy that the anime decided to give us. Number 27, Joey versus Mako. A super underrated duel in Battle City. Joey takes on Mako as he continues to run the gauntlet of dueling Yugi's Duelist Kingdom opponents. We learn a bit more about Mako in this duel regarding his dad, and I actually think the backstory is extremely well done. The dueling action is pretty good, but it's the backstory and dialogue between these two that definitely raises it a lot for me in these rankings. We actually get to see Mako duel legitimately without any of that attack the moon nonsense, which is cool. Joey eventually uses the super popular combo of Giant Trunade, Scapegoat, and Panther Warrior to get the win. Some of these winning plays always crack me up in early Yu-Gi-Oh! Number 26, Kaiba versus Siegfried. Can I just say, Kaiba jumping into his own tournament to take out Siegfried will never not be hilarious to me. He just couldn't resist getting involved when he realized Siegfried was a rival of his company. It's honestly a super baller move. This is one of my favorites in this arc, as Kaiba is Kaiba, and Siegfried had also been built up really well to this point. Wins against Joey, Weevil, and Rex, he felt like a genuine challenger for Kaiba. The backstory dump between these two is great, and Kaiba uses Chaos Emperor Dragon. What's next, Kaiba? Yatagarasu? Kaiba eventually mows down all of Siegfried's Valkyrie monsters and defeats him. The dueling action is honestly really good, and I wasn't convinced who was going to win this right until the duel reached its conclusion. Number 25, Yugi and Kaiba versus Mask of Darkness and Mask of Light. This duel may be the definition of F around and find out. Loomis and Umbra tormented Yugi and Kaiba prior to this duel, being very involved in the plan of kidnapping Mokuba and Yugi's friends. The stakes are also insane for this one, which I love. All four players are in panes of glass that will shatter as soon as their life points hit 0, which of course would drop them to their death, or the Shadow Realm if you're watching the dub. Seeing Yugi and Kaiba having to work together was hilarious, especially when you remember that a loss means death. The banter between these four was great, and Kaiba summoning Obelisk as the two masked men cower in fear is one of my favorite scenes from Battle City. This duel honestly would have been higher if I cared at all about Umbra and Loomis, which I didn't back then, and 20 years later, I still don't. A lot of super cool aspects and moments, though, do bump it up to the top 25. Number 24, Joey versus Mai, round 3. I feel like now we are getting to the really good duels. The Joey versus Mai rematch is exactly what it should have been. A great effort by Joey to reach Mai's heart, which succeeds at the end, but costs Joey his life. Joey takes on Mai right after an awesome but draining duel against Valen. The action of this duel is good, but what takes this duel to another level, in my opinion, is the story and build-up between Joey and Mai's characters. Mai, who had been so worn down from the world following Battle City, trying her absolute hardest not to let Joey crack the shell that she's built around herself, but eventually, Joey gets through the evil powers of the Orichalcos, and Mai actually decides not to attack Joey to win, but at this point, it doesn't matter. Joey is exhausted and collapses and dies to the seal. The final shots of the two of them are incredible, and it's truly a great end to Mai's character and the relationship between Joey and Mai. Number 23, Yugi versus Weevil, round 2. Listen, I'm never going to lie to you guys. There's one reason and one reason only this duel is ranked as high as it is. Seeing Weevil get destroyed by the absolute rage of Atem is one of the most satisfying sequences in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And of course, one of the most well-known as well. The duel itself is actually really interesting, since it's the first time Atem has to duel after losing to Raphael and losing Yugi. The Berserker Soul scene, though, does make this one of the better duels of the show. Also, I wasn't the biggest fan in the world of this and the Joey and Rex duel flip-flopping and interrupting each other, but it's whatever. If you rewatch this duel, we all know the reason why, and there's nothing wrong with that. Number 22, Joey versus Kaiba, round 2. This is a really fun duel that finally let us breathe a bit from the insane stakes that Battle City consistently brought. Love the dichotomy of this duel in comparison to the first time Joey and Kaiba dueled, because it showed how far Joey has grown and come as a duelist. To actually put up a good fight against Kaiba and make some viewers think he was going to win, that was a laughable thought earlier in the show. Sadly, Joey's best efforts here were thwarted, and Kaiba was able to use Twin-Ended Thunder Dragon and Blue Eyes White Dragon in order to defeat Joey and take the bronze. Number 21, Yugi versus Strings. I think this one has a special place in a lot of people's hearts. There's a few reasons for this. Strings' design comes off scary when you're a young kid, but actually pretty cool when you get older. The infinite loop that Yugi uses to win the duel, and of course, Slifer. This is the debut of Slifer the Sky Dragon, and the shot of it screaming at Yugi while Yugi is trapped in a steel cage is an all-timer. It was also great seeing more of Marek, who was pretty much in the background of the show up until this point. Yugi is able to deck Strings out using a combo involving Slifer's effect and Revival Slime, which forces Strings to keep drawing until he decks out. The duel is a lot of fun, and there are so many memorable moments from it, which places it just outside of my top 20. Number 20, Yugi vs. Kaiba, Round 1. Okay, sure, the dueling action here is insanely primitive and boring. Does nostalgia affect me placing it this high? Abso-freaking-lutely. Dude, I still mark out whenever I watch the Exodia obliterate scene from this duel. The final turn is the only thing anyone ever remembers about this one, but it's so well done and so culturally iconic that I couldn't not place this one in the top 20 at least. Probably the most undeserving duel in the top 20 when solely looking at the duel action, but I don't care. This is a classic matchup that got so many people hooked on this show, and I really do think it deserves its flowers for that. Number 19, Joey versus Siegfried. The best duel of the Kaiba Corp Grand Prix comes in at number 19. I always loved this matchup. A duelist that has grown in stature and ability so much in Joey, and a duelist that seemed unbeatable in Siegfried, especially after the way he defeated Rex and Weevil with such ease. It was cool to actually see Siegfried's Valkyrie effects and how Joey tried to deal with them. This is truly one of the more unpredictable duels in the show. No manga. Joey winning made sense. Siegfried winning made sense. It was so hard to predict, and I loved the way that it ends. Joey places all of his marbles on luck, and it actually fails. He picks the wrong card and loses the duel because of it. Realistic probability coming back to bite a duelist? That is insanely rare, especially for the luckiest guy in Domino City. Loved the ending and loved the action throughout. Number 18, Joey versus Odeon. Which one is Marek again? This duel always cracks me up because our team literally believed that Odeon was Marek for pretty much the whole duel, which added a crazy amount of dramatic irony to it. This felt like Joey's first real test of Battle City, and I loved the bluffing games early on. Odeon fills his whole field with set cards, which causes Joey to play very passively, completely passing on a turn altogether. Luckily, Joey has the ultimate trap negator in Jinzo, which he is able to summon to stop Odeon's trap fiesta. This gives Joey an opening, and he almost wins the duel in a single turn, but Odeon is able to buy time with Swords of Revealing Light, and eventually summons Fake Ra, and due to this being a fake copy, the bolts of lightning gravely injure Odeon and Joey, permanently KOing Odeon and giving Joey the win. It's a super fun chess match, has a really unpredictable and unique ending, and a duel that I feel is gravely underrated in the show. Number 17, Yugi vs. Kaiba Round 2. I think every Yugi vs. Kaiba duel is just great. This one has a lot of the ridiculous Duelist Kingdom elements, including fusing Mammoth Graveyard with Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which causes it to melt. Before that, we also see the powers of Kuribo, and yeah, it's a fun, weird time. Kaiba eventually threatens to kill himself if Yugi calls his attack, which leads to some really good character issues between Yugi and Atem. Ultimately, Kaiba gets the win, tying the score 1-1, even though it really wasn't deserved at all. The aura and legacy of it being a Yugi versus Kaiba duel definitely boosts it a little bit for me, admittedly so. Number 16, Yugi vs. Joey Round 2. I think it goes without saying, but all the duels from this point on are very good, in my opinion. I feel like we've entered the real cream of the crop at this point. I usually find brainwash elements in anime to be boring, but this one actually worked very well. I love seeing Yugi struggle to not only defeat Joey in a duel where both of their lives were on the line, but to also struggle to get through to him emotionally and spiritually. Eventually, Marek somehow loses his hold on Joey, and Yugi actually succeeds. The whole time, Taya is also sitting under a giant block that will killer if the duel stops. Like, this was seriously an effed up duel. Yugi and Joey end up losing at the same time, but Joey is able to free Yugi with his ki, and then Serenity, of all people, saves Joey after seeing for the first time in years. It's really a great high-stakes duel, and one that I could definitely gush about for a little bit. Number 15, Kaiba, later Yugi, versus Noah Kaiba. The best duel of the virtual world arc is obviously the duel with Noah at the end, and it's the 15th best duel in the show. Despite my disliking of this arc as a whole, I can't ignore how entertaining this duel was. Noah's deck was kind of crazy, and seeing Kaiba be the one to fittingly face him at the end was really cool. We were actually going to see not the main character defeat the threat of an arc. Well, not really. Eventually, after Kaiba has a really humanizing moment with Mokuba, Yugi takes over the duel for him. While I think I would have preferred Kaiba being the one to defeat Noah, Yugi's turn with Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon and then Diffusion is so unbelievably crazy that it makes up for it. Even after Yugi came in, it's not like he came in and instantly won. He was on the defensive for a lot of his time playing, which really showed how strong Noah was. I feel like this was an appetizer for the darts duel, which is obviously ranked a little higher, but this is the best duel of the virtual world arc by a country mile. Number 14, Yugi versus Raphael, round 2. This duel does not get talked about enough. Every time you mention Yugi Raphael, everyone thinks round 1, which is fair. And obviously I have that duel higher than this, but this duel gets so overlooked it's almost criminal. The rematch between these two is really, really good. My favorite part has to be when they do the fake out loss with the same exact shot and animation of how Yugi lost in their first round duel. I think this is also one of the only times in the show where Yugi had to duel someone that genuinely beat him the first time they dueled. It added a sense of uncertainty where Yugi was almost the underdog going into a duel, which is a feeling we as the viewer almost never have. I also kind of love the ending of this one, which sees Raphael basically surrender by using Soul Charge to summon his beloved monsters, and Soul Charge's cost ends the duel for him. Raphael is finally brought to his senses, and the ending makes sense. It also shows how strong of a competitor Raphael is, and it's a shame we didn't get to see more of him, as to me, he is the MVP of this season. Number 13, Joey versus Valen. Another crazy good duel in the Doma arc. This is the famous armor duel as Joey takes on Valen in one of the more physical-inducing duels of the show. The armor archetype that Valen uses actually encases him in armor, and he is the one who is able to do the attacks and, of course, take the damage. Joey catches on to this idea, and so he also bears armor as the duel goes on, and let's be honest, this is the freaking coolest Joey has ever looked. It's crazy how much physical pain these two endured, and it genuinely became a last man standing WWE match, which is so different and unique for a Yu-Gi-Oh duel. Joey is eventually declared the winner and outlasts Valen in one of the more physically inducing brawls we have ever seen in Yu-Gi-Oh. You almost forget it's a Yu-Gi-Oh duel, and for its uniqueness and back and forth action, I have always been a super big fan of this one, and I think it's justified being a fan favorite. Number 12, Yugi and Kaiba versus Darts. I said before the Noah duel was like an appetizer for this. Both are very good duels, both are very long duels, both conclude an anime-only arc, and both see Yugi and Kaiba in some sort of way team up to defeat the boss. That being said, I do like this one a little bit more than the Noah duel. Love the infinity nonsense that happens at the end of it, and I like the structure of it a lot more, with Yugi and Kaiba starting the duel rather than passing the baton. Kaiba using one final trap to help Yugi right before the seal takes him away is an epic moment. Darts using Yugi's friends and Pegasus as the soldier monsters also added a really chilling touch. And then, of course, the payoff of seeing the legendary knights in their knight form, Divine Serpent God Gay. It's one I could ramble on for a long time about, but in the interest of time, I won't. Just know I rate this one very highly. I think the Infinity stuff is hilarious at the end, and if I cared a little bit more about darts, it would definitely be a top 10 duel for me. Number 11, Yugi versus Raphael. It's only a little ahead of the rematch, but it is deservedly ahead of the rematch for a myriad of reasons. This duel has one of the craziest shock values any of the duels on this list have, as it saw Yugi lose to Raphael. Furthermore, he gave into the dark powers of the Seal of Orichalcos, and we got to see a truly evil, corrupt pharaoh, which was really cool and really scary to bear witness to. I remember when I watched this as a kid, I was confident Yugi was going to win thanks to the power of the seal. But of course, you can't win giving into evil, and so Raphael ends up shockingly defeat Yugi in one of the coolest, most symbolic ways you'll ever see. He powers up his Iatos thanks to the trusted monsters of Yami Yugi that had been sacrificed to Catapult Turtle, and completely destroys Yugi's Curry Babylon. The duel is wonderful, and it just misses out on my top 10. However, it is the strongest filler duel in the entire show, in my opinion. Kicking off our top 10 is the duel between the Paradox Brothers and Yugi and Joey. Now, this duel follows no rules, which of course is common for Duelist Kingdom, but it feels even more insane because the monster card Labyrinth Wall turns the entire dueling arena into a maze. You can only move your monsters in the maze the amount of space is equal to their level. The whole premise is ridiculous, but it is so fun and unique at the same time. I would argue this is one of the most unique concept duels in all of the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. The Paradox Brothers end up summoning the Gate Guardian, and Yugi and Joey's response to that is summoning Black Skull Dragon. Two great summonings, two great monsters. The overarching riddle and premise that Yugi and company might be stuck wandering the underground for the rest of their lives in an endless maze also gave us some great life or death stakes, which I really was not expecting as the duel went on. Yugi and Joey pull out the win, they solve the riddle, they get enough star chips to move to Pegasus's castle. It's always been a personal favorite of mine. Remember the whole VHS thing? I watched this duel so many times with my brother. Maybe that's the reason that I have it in my top 10, but I do think that this is an awesome one. Number 9, Kaiba versus Ishizu. This duel is awesome and contains one of the most epic moments from the original series. The duel is pretty back and forth, which we as the viewer would not really expect, since Ishizu is a character we had never seen duel before. So to throw her in a duel with one of the best duelists in the world, well, I think a lot of us doubted that Ishizu could hang with Kaiba, but she absolutely does, and even uses a crazy combo that kills Kaiba's deck, leaving him with only 6 cards left in the deck. Ishizu would eventually plant a bomb in Obelisk the Tormentor, which will lose Kaiba the duel if he chose to attack with it. But the real epic part of this duel is the final 5 minutes, where Kaiba sees a vision thanks to the Millennium Rod, sacrifices his Obelisk, doing the unthinkable and summoning Blue Eyes White Dragon, beating Destiny, and changing the future. Classic Kaiba. An awesome ending to a really, really cool duel. Number 8, Yugi vs. Bakura, Round 2. While the deadly battle between the Pharaoh and Zork raged on outside the tomb, Yugi and Bakura were locked in a duel that had everything on the line. If Yugi was able to defeat Bakura, then he would be able to tell the Pharaoh his name, which would end up completely swinging the battle in his favor. However, because this was a shadow game, the loser just straight up dies. So we knew this duel was going to be super intense, and it really served as a coming-of-age moment for Yugi, since the fate of the world was genuinely on the line. On his final draw, Yugi miraculously pulls Gandora, the only card in his deck that could save him, and ends up defeating Bakura and really stepping out of the light of the Pharaoh. I love duels that have everything on the line. Bakura duels were so freaking creepy, which just added to the drama. This duel did not disappoint, making it one of my favorite duels in Duel Monsters. Number 7, Yugi versus Pandora. I feel like this is always my big unpopular pick, but I love the duel between Yugi and Pandora that takes place in Battle City. Battle of the Dark Magicians. In the original duel, Yugi and Pandora's legs are strapped to the wall, and blades will legitimately slice off their legs when the life points hit 0. It was extremely dark, but whenever there's an element of that, it just adds to the intensity of the duel. At one point, both players have their trump card Dark Magician on the field, and literally have like 5 trap cards just stalling and waiting for someone to make their move, and as soon as one of them did, then the chain of trap cards and effects just began. The decks were so similar, and that made this duel so memorable to me. And out of all of Marek's rare hunters, I felt like Pandora was the only one you could genuinely relate to and feel bad for, as they gave him a really meaningful and sad backstory. We also get the awesome debut of Dark Magician Girl, which ultimately wins the duel for Yugi. The duel had a great dark theme, really unique action, an iconic monster debut, and I'll argue with anyone, I really think this is one of the best duels in the original series. Number 6, Marek versus Joey. This duel takes place in the semifinals of the Battle City tournament, and for me, this is where Joey becomes a legitimate duelist. Up until this point, Joey had not been in a duel of this level of intensity, and since it's a shadow game, his own life was on the line. This particular shadow game was that each time a player's monster was attacked, the player themselves would feel the same pain. This duel for me had a great level of pacing. In the early going, Marek was dominating. His trap cards kept making Joey second guess himself. The taunting Marek does is always insanely fun to watch, but about halfway through the duel, Joey is able to summon Jinzo and destroys Marek traps, and you just feel like the tide of the duel shifts until Marek eventually summons the Winged Dragon of Ra. And then one of the best moments in the show happens. Everyone assumes Joey is going to die based on the attack of Ra. However, after the smoke clears, somehow, some way, Joey is still standing. Barely, but he's still standing. And all he has to do is summon a monster attack and he wins. But right as he's in the middle of calling the winning attack, he faints and stops breathing. Such a great duel, and a top-tier duel, obviously, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Number 5, Yugi versus Marek. So the next Marek duel comes in at number 5, and this one is just a classic. The stakes were great and also unique for a shadow game where Marek made it almost a lose-lose by making it so that the weaker spirit would die if their life points at 0. So Marek would die if Yami Marek lost, and Yugi would die if Yami Yugi lost. So it seemed like almost a lose-lose situation. But watching Yami Marek duel again was wonderfully creepy. Seeing all the counters between these two was awesome, especially the chess match between Yugi's Slifer and Obelisk versus Marek's Winged Dragon of Ra. Eventually, Yugi's spell card Ragnarok removes all of Yami Marek's monsters from play, and since Yami Marek was fused with Ra, his grip over Marek's body weakens. The real Marek is able to take control, surrenders to Yugi, giving Yami Yugi a crucial win. An awesome conclusion to one of my favorite arcs in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Battle City. Number 4, Yugi versus Bakura, Round 2. I always had trouble deciding which duel I prefer more between Yugi and Bakura, but I think the battle between them in the Battle City quarters is better. The duel starts with Bakura getting destroyed, which you find out is on purpose, just to summon Dark Necrofear. Yugi immediately kills Dark Necrofear, bringing Bakura's life points down to 150, and then you realize Bakura was actually luring Yugi to destroy Dark Necrofear. The mind games he played were fun to watch. He uses Dark Necrofear's death to play the disturbing field spell Dark Sanctuary, and slowly but surely, he recovers his life points and starts draining Yugi's. With Ouija board about to spell out death to end the duel, Yugi has one chance to draw his god card Slifer, and to no one's shock, he does, and wins the duel. I loved Bakura's strategy in this. It was such a cool, unique strategy, and seeing Yugi overcome it by getting a miracle draw for Slifer was awesome to watch. Number 3, Yugi versus Pegasus, Round 2. I always feel nostalgia plays a factor in this, but I also think Yugi and Pegasus is a great duel. It obviously takes place at the end of the first arc, and this is a duel I definitely remembered very well from my childhood. Once Yugi and Yami start swapping places, which negates Pegasus's mind-reading abilities, that's when the duel really starts to turn. They destroy the seemingly impenetrable Toon World field spell, and Pegasus takes the duel to the realm of darkness, or the Shadow Realm. The duel from there gets really good, and it's crazy to think Yami was able to win this duel via Kuribo, which is arguably the weakest card in his deck. The high stakes and build-up entering this duel, and the dueling action, and just how compelling of a character I thought Pegasus was, makes this the 3rd best duel in the original show. Number 2, Yugi versus Yami Yugi, the final duel of the original Yu-Gi-Oh series, and this duel's got everything. Besides the two main characters dueling each other, the iconic moments from this duel are some of the best moments in the show to date. The way Yami manages to play all three Egyptian gods on the field together still gives me chills, and the way Yugi is able to somehow defeat all three of them also still gives me chills. Towards the end, Yami summons Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl, and it really looks like he's going to win, but Yugi uses a trap card from a few turns ago that is able to ban Yami's Monster Reborn and foils his plan to bring back Slifer, which pretty much guarantees Yugi's win and symbolizes how close he was with Yami that he was able to predict that move so far in advance. A sense of happiness for Yugi is slowly followed by sadness when you and Yugi both realize that this is the end. Even though Yugi is going to win the duel, the Pharaoh is going to be gone forever and truly pass away. The emotion throughout this duel is magnificent. The duel itself's got some great moments. It's great watching how far both Yugi and Atem have come since the first episode, and for all those reasons listed, this duel is the second best duel in Duel Monsters. The best duel in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, and in my opinion, the best duel in the franchise, Yugi versus Kaiba, Round 3 in Battle City. The two most iconic characters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Finally have their long-anticipated rematch after the Exodia Obliterate episode and the fluky duel where Kaiba threatened to commit suicide. Besides the anticipation of this titanic clash, the content of this duel was also very enjoyable to watch. In the early phases, Yugi and Kaiba both try to bring out their Egyptian god cards. When they do, the card's strength teleport them to Egypt, where they see images of their past selves taking place in what seems to be a duel. As the duel progresses and their god cards are destroyed, they both then begin to play classic cards from their deck. Dark Magician, Buster Blader, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. It felt like two different duels over one long battle, which I loved. The end of this duel is great, where Kaiba talks about how this duel will allow him to bury his past. Yugi explains anger and hatred is never something someone can build on and use for motivation, and he ends up defeating Kaiba thanks to Yugi using Defusion to split up Kaiba's Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon attack. You almost kind of feel bad for Kaiba when you realize how devastated he is, as he's going to lose once again, truly to Yugi in his own tournament. But man, the duel just gets me so pumped up every time I watch it. I get that it's 6 episodes, and I get that there are people who criticize it for that, and I think that's fair. It is like a month and a half long if you're talking in real life time for how long this duel took place in, but despite its 6-episode length, I think the battle and the story that the duel tells is truly wonderful, and it's the best duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! In my opinion. I cannot believe that I made this video. This was a ridiculous video. But we did it. We're at the end here. My throat is on fire. Thank you all so much for watching. Please let me know some of your thoughts. If you want to give me some of your favorite duels that you think I have too high, too low, whatever you want to talk about, let me know down below. Yes, I do plan to do it for all the other shows, even Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, which I feel like has double the amount of duels as this one. I am not looking forward to that. I'm actually getting anxious thinking about it, and I never get anxious. So, you know, that tells you all it needs to. But guys, if you watch this long, I don't really know what to tell you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. I'll talk to you in the comments, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.